So Lewis Hamilton won the British Grand Prix this weekend, which you will know unless you've lived under a rock, and in doing so he gained 25 points on his main rival Max Verstappen. Well done, Lewis. Well done, Sir Lewis, you have done a mighty job there. It's just the way he did it was a bit controversial. See, on lap 1, Lewis knocks Max Verstappen off the course and into the barriers, getting a 10-second penalty and going on to win the race as no one else is really competing with him for that top spot. So just how could the crash have been avoided, and what sort of penalty should Lewis have got? So let's open your mind and just put you in the moment. You've got this major first lap with Lewis and Max dueling it out. It's one of the best duels I've seen in recent times on an F1 track. Verstappen seems to get the better of Lewis through the first few turns. Before coming out of Village, the wheels touch. Lewis manages to get ahead going into Brooklands before Max manages to dive on the inside, going round into Luffield and get the place back. Going on to the old pit straight though, Lewis manages to get the slipstream of Max and they go into Copse Corner. Lewis diving down the inside in a very narrow area until disaster. The wheels touch and Max flies into the barrier at 180 miles an hour. Carnage on Twitter ensues, as it always does, and Lewis, without much damage to his car, continues on the race. So who's really to blame? That's where we should start off with. For me, it is Hamilton's fault, mainly. I think Max could have done more, but at no point is Hamilton ever in front of Max Verstappen going into the corner. This, coupled with the fact that he is taking a detrimental line, I mean look, he's going off wide, he's not hipping the apex. So this is not the line that should be taken when you're overtaking through Copse. This in general puts him into Max, makes Max go off course, and if Max did go to avoid, Lewis would already have pushed him out almost off the course already, through that line. There's a picture in the FIA rulebook that almost details this exact accident, and you can clearly see it says Lewis is at fault. Do I think it's deliberate? If you seriously think someone is going to take someone out at Copse Corner going 200 miles an hour on purpose and manage to avoid damage as deliberate, well, good for you, but you're wrong. Don't get me wrong, it is a rash and dangerous move, but it's not intended as something to take Max out. It's an aggressive move that Hamilton miscalculates and messes up through Copse. Of course, there is the issue of whether Max could have avoided it. I mean, being the car in front, you're never really looking behind that much. You look in your mirrors once or twice, but you're really looking at that corner, you're looking to nail it perfectly. He's not knowing exactly where Lewis is. He knows generally where he is, but he's not knowing exactly. So he turns in a little bit and gets clipped. If he keeps it out wide, as we saw with Leclerc in lap 50, you can get taken very out wide over the sausage curves, and that could even ruin your race by damaging your car. So I think Max is pretty much in the clear as to whether it's his fault or not, because I don't think there's much chance of him avoiding that move, especially with how far out Lewis is going through that corner. The Leclerc incident I think could easily have been looked at as well, considering how far out that takes Leclerc, but the complete difference is that Lewis sticks to the apex. This does mess up Leclerc's run through the corner and takes him out wide to avoid the crash, but he's also being extra precautious through there, and as such I think it's a lot more debatable. We've determined that Lewis probably should have backed out and that it probably was his fault, as much as the British media don't really want to tell you that. But then the question comes, was a 10-second penalty enough? Well, when we look at a big crash, it usually results in both cars going out between it, and at that point the penalty in a solid, very dangerous crash like this is quite severe. Take 2012, where Grosjean gets a one-race ban after the Belgian Grand Prix for causing a big crash in the beginning. That is a very strict ban. It is also Romain Grosjean, but for one crash, a one-race ban is still very huge. But it does set precedent. Or we can look at the 2018 Belgian Grand Prix, everything happens in Belgium for some reason, where Hülkenberg goes into the back of Alonso, sending him flying over Leclerc, over that little baby Alfa Romeo Leclerc. This resulted in a 10-place grid penalty for Hülkenberg in the next race. Again, another very strict penalty, a lot more than like a 10-second penalty in a race would be, because you are then having to climb up 10 more places, which would definitely hold you back a lot more, as seen with the likes of Sergio Perez after he started this race. But a decent sized crash in 2014 in Bahrain is probably my most comparable, between Pastor Maldonado and Esteban Gutierrez, where Maldonado flips Gutierrez over in an incident that is definitely dangerous, especially as it was pre-Halo incident, and it doesn't actually take both drivers out the race. For this, it netted Maldonado a 5-place grid penalty in the next race. Again, quite a decent punishment considering where you would be starting. This is probably the most comparable incident I can see in terms of just the fact that it's one decent sized crash where only one driver goes out of it, and one of them is definitely seen more at fault. Other than that, I think the situation is quite comparable to the Schumacher-Hill incident, apart from the fact that Lewis also doesn't go out. This resulted in case you don't know, Schumacher taking out Hill in the last race of the season, as to where Schumacher would then win the championship, win the world title. It wasn't seen as purposeful, despite all the outrage, by the FIA, and as such Schumacher did not get punished for it, and he won the title that year. This is probably the most comparable incident in the sense of the impact to the title challenge. Another incident between Schumacher and Villeneuve in 1997, where Schumacher actually deliberately hits Villeneuve in the side. It ends up beaching Schumacher though and costing him, but the FIA saw that as a deliberate incident, as a battle for the championship at Valencia, and it ended up in Schumacher getting thrown out of the championship. His points were nullified, he wasn't contending for the title, and Villeneuve wins it. So, as we've seen through this, the FIA is not consistent, they're not decisive and reliable enough for us to understand where this penalty is definitely going to end up. Do I expect any Hamilton exclusion from the championship? No, of course not. It wasn't a complete deliberate thing, and nor do I think we want to get that, because competitiveness is where this sport is about. I think a grid penalty for the next race might be in question, especially by the FIA, considering how little the 10-place penalty actually did to affect Hamilton this race. But I guess at the end of the day, if you just bin your car into the main competitor and knock him out the track, why not just call it a fair strategy now? Especially if you get away with it. It's great thinking by the Mercedes strategists. They deserve a pay rise. Lastly, the whole how do I put it, stuff from the fans toward the two drivers is completely uncalled for. With the people saying things like Max should have died in the crash, or the racist stuff toward Hamilton, it is completely wrong and completely condemnable. These are guys that are humans at the end of the day. They have feelings like us, and despite the fact they can drive a car very, very well around a circuit, they are just people. And yes, it is frustrating seeing your favourite driver losing in the championship, or seeing your rival knock your favourite driver off the track and then go on to win the race. But this is sport at the end of the day. This is competitiveness. This is F1 at its best. Competition to the highest degree. Whether this competition toward the end leads to sadness or elation, just be happy you get to witness another piece of racing history in the making. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be seeing you in the next video coming very soon. Leave your thoughts in the comments over these crashes. Don't want any anything too rowdy considering Twitter these past few days. Keep it nice and civil. You know how it is. And bye.